Reform UK, led by Nigel Farage, has placed the two-child benefit cap at the centre of its welfare platform. This cap, introduced in 2017, currently limits child tax credits and universal credit to the first two children in a family. Farage has pledged to abolish the cap, arguing it would ease financial pressure on larger families and cost around £3.5 billion a year. The proposal is part of broader reforms, including increased tax incentives for married couples and reinstating pensioner benefits. Before you share another clip about benefit cuts, let's get the basics straight. Reform UK and Nigel Farage have been talking about two different things that people often mix up: the two-child limit and the benefit cap. Today, I'll explain the difference, what Reform UK is saying right now, what they've said earlier, and what that could mean for different families. First, the two-child limit. This is a rule inside universal credit about how many children are counted for the child element. Normally, UC pays the child element for the first two children if they were born on or after 6th April 2017. There are specific exceptions, for example, multiple births or certain safeguarding circumstances. Child benefit is separate and not governed by the two-child limit. Now, the benefit cap. That's a different policy. It sets a ceiling on the total amount of most benefits a working-age household can receive, with different amounts depending on household type and location. It doesn't count children one by one, like the two-child rule does. It caps the overall total. A tougher overall welfare stance. They talk about reducing the total welfare bill and applying stricter checks to certain parts of the system, including younger disability claims. A targeted change to the two-child limit. Instead of scrapping it for everyone, the current line is to lift the two-child limit only for British citizens in full-time work. In other words, a conditional easing linked to work and citizenship, rather than a universal removal. Alongside that, they signal tighter eligibility for out-of-work claimants and migrants. How does that compare with earlier messaging? Earlier in the year, reporting around Reform UK suggested simply scrapping the two-child limit. That's a broader promise than what's being floated now. The newer version narrows it, focusing relief on working British citizens, with tighter rules elsewhere. So, the direction of travel is headline relief for some, combined with overall restraint or cuts in the wider system. Who might gain or lose? Let's make this practical with quick examples. These are illustrative. Your result depends on final legal text, earnings, housing, and other entitlements. Scenario A. Working British family with 3+ children on UC. Under a limited lift of the two-child limit for full-time workers, the third child, or later, could become eligible for the UC child element where they weren't before. That's a potential gain. But if wider welfare cuts or stricter assessments apply elsewhere, the net effect could be smaller than expected. Scenario B. Out-of-work family with 3+ children on UC. If the policy limits the lift to working British citizens, no change here on the child element side. On top of that, any broader eligibility tightening could reduce support in other areas, so no gain, and possibly pressure elsewhere. Scenario C. Migrant household with 3+ children on UC. The new talk includes tighter eligibility for migrants. That suggests no lift of the two-child limit for this group under the current framing, and possibly stricter access in other parts of the system. Scenario D. Younger disability benefit claimant. The leadership has flagged a crackdown on what they describe as a rise in young disability claims. If you're in this group, you could face stricter assessments or changed criteria. Details will matter: definitions, thresholds, and evidentiary requirements. What's still unclear, even with the recent speeches and interviews, we still don't have exact costings and where the money comes from, if any part of the two-child limit is lifted. Precise definitions, for example, what counts as full-time work, how citizenship is confirmed, and how migrant eligibility is defined. Timelines for when changes would start, and whether there are transitional protections for families already affected. The final legal drafting. Policy speeches can sound simple, but legislation is where the real impact is set. Exact costings and where the money comes from, if any part of the two-child limit is lifted. Precise definitions. For example, what counts as full-time work, how citizenship is confirmed, and how migrant eligibility is defined. Timelines for when changes would start, and whether there are transitional protections for families already affected. The final legal drafting. Policy speeches can sound simple, but legislation is where the real impact is set. If this helped, like and share, so more people see the difference between the two-child limit and the benefit cap.